What's up, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of Master's Thesis Magic, the series where I tell you the best ever tips to do a great master's thesis while you watch me play janky decks of Magic the Gathering. As usual, we'll start the stream with advice for your thesis, and then we'll end with a little bit of a deck tech and game commentary. So, the topic for today is about the biggest mistake that students make when writing the theory or the literature review, if you want, for their master's thesis. And that mistake is trying to find a hole, trying to find a gap in the literature. What I want to tell you today is to stop finding a gap in the literature and instead find a giant whose shoulders you can stand on, okay? And I'm going to give you two strategies that you can follow for doing so, okay? First, what is the problem of finding a gap? The problem of finding a gap is that a gap may not be interesting. Just because nobody has studied something, that doesn't mean that that something is interesting, that that something needs to be studied. Nobody has done a study looking at the relationship between retention of volunteers in the Nord-Pas-de-Calais region in France. Okay, why should we care? Isn't the rest of the research on retention volunteers good enough to, run volunteers in Nord-Pas-de-Calais? Right? Nobody has looked at the effect of people's of the relationship between retention and performance in volunteers. Okay, that sounds more interesting because it's more general, but why is it interesting? Why should I care? Why do I need to manage volunteer performance? Because, volunteers normally do menial tasks, right? So finding a gap, finding a hole is not good enough, okay? Plus, you need to look at research as basically a bunch of conversations happening at the same time. And if you go to a bunch of people that are discussing retention and you tell them, nobody has ever thought about this, and me, who has never published anything in your field, just found out the big hole that your suckers are missing, that's not gonna cut it, right? People are not going to want to engage with you. So instead, you want to stand on the shoulders of giants. As much as I hate Google, props to Google for having this sentence in their Google search engine for academic papers. So Google Scholar. Literally, if you go to the Google Scholar page, you'll have the search bar and then it'll say below, standing on the shoulders of giants, not finding holes, standing on the shoulders of giants. So how do you do this? How do you find a giant whose shoulders you can stand on, right? Previous research that motivates your own research, that shows that your research is important, okay? There are two ways to do this. One is about theory, the other one is about data, okay? So let's start with the theory. I'm currently working on a paper that is looking at the link between performance and retention on volunteers. Now, if I was going to state a gap, I could say that if you read the entire literature on volunteer performance, there is no link between performance and retention. The link is not there, it's not studied, okay? The immediate feedback from people in this literature is, let me go to Google Scholar and I'll find the thesis in 1979 that on page 3, said whatever. I mean, we've all been on this Twitter discussions, right? So same thing in research, right? People will Google it up and they will tell you, somebody has already found this, okay? So what do you want to do? what you want to do is you want to find a theory, a research stream, a research topic, or even just a paper that can help you specify this link, in this case the link between performance and retention. So what I do in my paper, which could easily be done in a thesis, I mean it's a short paper, is, you say there's this research on serious leisure that can help link performance and retention. Now, people that are looking at performance and retention will tell you, well, tell me more about this. João, what is a serious leisure? I haven't heard about this. So how do you think serious leisure can form a link between performance and retention, right? So I'm not telling people that look, there's this thing that you haven't seen, stupid people, blind people. No, I have told them that there is a literature that I found. Look at this thing that I found. Not look at this thing that you're missing. It's look at this thing that I found. How interesting it is for your topic. And people will want to learn more about it. And then they may say, maybe that's, not useful enough or so on. But you are standing on the shoulder of the serious leisure giants, right? You are bringing the giants with you and showing to other giants, look at what these giants are saying. Isn't it really interesting, right? So you're bringing the giant. Now, bringing the giant is not trivial. It's just not like, there's this paper. You need to establish a link between research on serious leisure and the relationship between performance and retention. But you are bringing something to show to people, a new theory, a new paper that I haven't read, something new, which sparks your curiosity, okay? So you're not trying to tell people that there's something they have not seen, but you are trying to show them something new that you have seen, right? You're bringing something new to the table. You're not telling people that there's something missing, okay? Now, sometimes there are no papers that that you can use to do this. The research just isn't there, right? So what can you do? Well, there's something that you can always find, which is data that is similar to the data that you have, okay? So, for example, I have a paper on the use of information systems for impression management, to impress your boss, okay? Managers using information systems to impress their leaders. I have a paper on that. Now, if I was looking for a hole, I would go to people doing research on information systems and say, have you noticed that none of you suckers has ever talked about impression management? It is a hole. You should be talking about it. You are so stupid. Fortunately, you have me to tell you all about impression management. What would be the reaction, okay? Again, you're showing a hole, and they will say, fine, okay? And they probably would pick up a paper that, or a journal article or newspaper article that says, that talks about it, okay? Now, what I did in that paper, I couldn't find any paper that did this, and I did not want to find any paper because that's the point of my paper. But what I did is, I found in a very famous paper on information systems, data where the author of that paper said, one of the things that people are doing with the information system is using it for impression management. But that paper is about IT-led change. It's not about impression management. So, there's literally a paragraph. But that's what I want, because I just want to find the giant, climb, stand on shoulders, right? That's what I want. I want the thing that I can bring to these people and say, wow, have you seen this new cool thing? I found this new cool thing. What is this new cool thing? Well, there's this piece of data in this paper that talks about impression management. They'll say, wow, that's so cool. Tell us a little bit more. Do you have more data about that? Yes, I have an entire paper. I have an entire thesis with data about that, right? So this for me is the ideal, right? If you can find this, that's the best, right? It's not a paper, so there's a lot of work to do. You're not just bringing, an entire paper to the table, but you're bringing an observation, right? Data. But data that is not your data, it's data that is already published in a paper and that has been identified. So it's not just an interview quote or something saying this. It's an interview quote that has been analyzed as evidence that information systems are used for impression management, okay? Then you can say, there's evidence that this is happening in the world, but this evidence hasn't been theorized because the paper where I found this is about change and not about impression management and information systems. Sorry about that. Brain froze a little bit there. That's much better. It's not a hole. You don't want to tell people that there's a hole in their midst. You want to show people something new that they can add. Okay? Not something missing, but something new that they can add. Okay? That just makes your life much easier. It makes your thesis much better. It makes the literature review much easier to present, and your defense much easier because, people will always say, well, but this paper almost talks about this. Fine. If you are saying this paper already talks about this but hasn't theorized it, then you are in a much better position. Okay? So what is the advice here? Do not try to find a hole in the literature. Do not write a literature review or a theory section that says nobody has ever studied this. Instead, write a literature review or a theory section that says, I found this paper that adds a new dimension, that brings a new variable to this topic of research. And what I'm going to do is, inspired by this paper, I'm going to do my own research to really bring out the implications of this for the conversation that you are having between performance and retention, between impression management and information systems. Hope this was helpful, everybody. I'll say goodbye for now, and if games allow it, I'll come back and I'll do a little bit of a tech. Have a great time and best of luck for your thesis. If you have questions, if there's a topic that you want me to discuss, please do let me know and I'll be happy to do a video for you. Okay, everybody, so we are back to discuss a little bit about the deck and the game. So the deck is basically trying to play sagas with creatures that feed off enchantments, using Shepherd of the Flock to bounce sagas back into the hand. This was like a super slow game. My opponent apparently did not have a lot of good cards because they did have just 3 lands, but they were able to generate a lot of mana. So really slow game. Didn't really show what the deck wanted to do, but I guess it's good enough for the win. So cards enough for the win, and I guess a good deck is like that. I mean, even if it doesn't do what you really wanted to do, you still win the game because you're still playing good cards. So I hope you enjoy that, and see you guys soon.